Contemporaneous notes. Do you have documents? Look at this indictment. What underlies every element of it, every fact? A first-hand witness, a participant, some sort of contemporaneous notes or documents. Here's the coup memo that John Eastman wrote. It is complete, it is verified, it is authentic. So we, in a way, when you look back at this indictment, it has revived this idea central to democracy and our news business: facts matter.
Bob Woodward, Joyce Vance, Michael Schmidt, Paul Butler, and Charlie Sykes. Thank you all very much for coming on this morning.
That is really such an important point from Bob. We've been talking for some time about gravity returning, that actually the truth mattering. You have conspiracy theorists who lied about parents whose children were slaughtered at Sandy Hook. They are now paying. You have newscasters who lied repeatedly about the big lie. And a news network had to pay $1 billion, close to $1 billion, and will probably have to pay another $1 billion. Facts matter. And we've been going through this journey over the past several years where we've just seen people lie repeatedly, and never thought there was a consequence to it. We have seen time and again over the past 6 months the laws of gravity are returning to this society, to this republic. And this is, I think, just the latest and maybe the most dramatic example of that.
Still ahead on Morning Joe, should President Biden be speaking about Donald Trump's indictment? We're going to ask his former press secretary, Jen Psaki, that question straight ahead. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Easy on the gas.
Force a habit. I gotta wrap this commercial. I think I'm late on my payment.
It's okay. The General gives you a break when you need it.
Yeah, we let you pick your own due date, so you can pay your car insurance when it's best for you.
Well, it's good to know, because this next scene might take a while.
For a great low rate, go with the General.
Hey, Verilux, can you imagine the progressive lens of the future?
You mean a lens engineered with artificial intelligence, powered by over 1 million eyeglass wearer data points, so it predicts your natural eye movement? Discover the new Verilux XR series and experience instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. See the future now. Verilux by Essilor.
Are you tired of that old worn-out bath or shower? Now you can have a new one installed in just one day with a new limited-time offer from Jacuzzi Bathroom Model.
We're waiving all installation costs with no interest and no payments for 1 year.
Hi, I'm Art Edmonds. Jacuzzi has been making water feel great for over 65 years. And now you can get a gorgeous custom bathroom model at a price you can afford. And the best part is, they'll install it in as little as 1 day with no stress and no mess.
I've been trying to get him to remodel that bath for years. I called, and they did in just 1 day.
And at a price we can afford.
Every time I stepped over my old tub, I worried I might fall. I don't have those fears anymore.
With Jacuzzi, you can get a safer, easy-entry shower with features like functional grab bars and a custom seat to keep you feeling comfortable and independent at home. And with no interest and no payments for a year, it's a bathroom remodel you can afford.
Oh my God, I love it!
It's so pretty and new, and the tub is so deep, and I can't wait to just go climb in it and just lay there.
Our designers are standing by to guide you step by step. So call now to get your 1-day installation and find out how you can get luxury.
Sorry about that. Go on now.
And shenanigans on the floor, right? By shenanigans, I mean things done, from a legislative standpoint or from members who are supporters of Trump. We underestimated, we all did, what Trump was capable of. And reading this is a reminder of what he is capable of. And that is the thing that stuck out to me, because we still have a lot of time to go. Trump is not going to be mute. He's going to be out there on the campaign trail. We've seen him already he's raising money, already tried to get his people to come out, and that's the other place to watch. But overall, I think the White House, if you're sitting in the White House, you want this to be about Trump. You want the air, the space, all of that to be on that, because that's the right thing for history and the right thing for them politically in this moment as well.
You know, Jen, we all did, certainly, you said you did, I'll just say I did as well, underestimated the lengths to which he would continue to go, trying to overthrow this election. And after reading this, I also will admit I underestimated many Republican office holders' dedication to their oath over Donald Trump. You read through this time and time again, whether it was acting attorney generals inside the White House, whether it was speakers of the House. You know, there would be a collective panic when you would see Michigan Speaker of the House and head of the Senate go Donald Trump. When Donald Trump would put out a statement lying about Mike Pence, would say Mike Pence agrees with me. Time and time again, Pence time and time again pushed back on the lies. It really was. It was striking by reading this just how far Donald Trump would go and how time and again he met resistance from Republican office holders, Republican appointees.
Yeah, I had a similar reaction, and I kind of have these nerdy labels at the top state by state, because what is so effective about how this is written, and maybe Jack Smith is a better communicator than we give him credit for, by the way, that's another takeaway, is that these officials in these states, to your point, I mean, there's an entire section on each state. Georgia specifically stuck out to me as all of these officials standing up time and time again. Now, we knew this from all of the reporting and discussion over the last couple of years, but it does stand out to you. Also, on page 36 of this indictment, if people haven't read through, I recommend they do it. It starts the whole conversations and the whole perspective of Mike Pence and the private conversations Mike Pence had with Donald Trump, including, which stuck out to me, and I can't get it out of my head, this moment where his chief of staff was so concerned because Donald Trump essentially threatened him in a private meeting, who was concerned about Mike Pence's safety. That is the vice president of the United States who served with the president, who stood by him, campaigned with him, advocated for his policies, and his chief of staff was so concerned about his safety because the violence here and the threats was of no concern, it seems, as you read this indictment, and that also stuck out to me.
Coming up, did Jack Smith set a trap for Donald Trump? NBC's Ken Delanian is reading between the lines of the federal indictment, and he joins the conversation next on Morning Joe.
Pretty crazy. It started raining a while ago and I had to get outside. I had my windows down in my car. I had to roll them up real quick. Sorry about that.
To lie, but not to launch a campaign of what Smith called pervasive and destabilizing lies and then act on it. That crossed the line into criminal conspiracy, and the indictment charges 3 separate conspiracies: conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct that official proceeding of Congress on January 6th, and conspiracy to deprive voters of their rights in those 7 states. And what I found remarkable, because there wasn't a lot of reporting on this along the way, is that I was wondering whether they were going to charge, and they did, the plot to subvert the Justice Department, which I found to be the most dangerous part of the whole thing. Because remember, Jeffrey Clark, co-conspirator number 4 in this indictment, wanted the DOJ to send a letter to states saying that the Justice Department had found pervasive fraud in the election, and we recommend that you call your legislature into special session. And as you said, Joe, those Trump-appointed career people at the Justice Department said, that's crazy, we're not doing that, and they stopped it. But nonetheless, Jack Smith has charged it in a conspiracy as part of this indictment here. And the indictment doesn't charge Donald Trump with inciting the violence on January 6th. It doesn't charge him with seditious conspiracy. But what it clearly articulates towards the end is that Donald Trump, as the indictment puts it, tried to exploit and did exploit the violence at the Capitol on January 6th to continue his campaign, his alleged campaign, to try to delay and subvert the lawful transfer of power, in part by calling 7 separate lawmakers. And there's some new evidence about calling senators, even as the violence was unfolding, and asking them to continue to delay. And last thing I'll say is that I'm stealing a little bit from Chuck Rosenberg here, so forgive me, Chuck, but there are legitimate defenses. Despite all the evidence that you laid out, a lot of people I talk to think that Donald Trump could persuasively claim that he legitimately believed the election was stolen and or that he was relying on the advice of lawyers. But the problem with that defense is that it seems that it would require him to testify at the trial. Who else can talk about Donald Trump's state of mind? And that obviously would be legally disastrous. So it's a real trap that Jack Smith has set for Donald Trump in a breathtaking 45-page indictment, guys.
It is a breathtaking 45-page indictment. It is narrow, it is focused, it is powerful for the reasons that Ken pointed out. Willie, first of all, he doesn't have to prove that Donald Trump was responsible for the riot. And secondly, he gives up at the very beginning. Donald Trump has a right to lie. If he wants to lie, he has a right to lie. But then he moves on to the conspiracies that he took part in, where he lays it out specifically. I will also say...
The rights of voters.
The rights of voters. I will also say Jeffrey Clark's name being in there makes one Eric Hirschman very prescient, who, as we learned, again, another Donald Trump lawyer, a Donald Trump lawyer who defended him through impeachment, defended him to the very end, up until January the 6th, telling Jeffrey Clark, you better get yourself a good criminal defense attorney. And we found out yesterday afternoon at about 5:30 that Eric Hirschman, once again, was right.
Yeah, even a lot of those people who were in the trenches right up to the end knew when it was time to get out, including Hirschman. Joe, even the New York Post is playing it straight today. Conspiracy to defraud the United States, talking about Donald Trump. The New York Daily News, crimes against democracy. Of course, this is headline news in papers, not just across the country, but around the world. So, Chuck Rosenberg, your name was invoked there by Ken. I'll let you have a crack at this 45-page document. What you see in it, what's there, and what's not in it. Were you surprised by anything as you read through the indictment?
It was an extraordinary indictment, Willie. Compelling, linear. By the way, prosecutors don't put things in an indictment unless they can prove it. What you see in this indictment over and over, as Joe so well articulated, are lots and lots, hordes of high-ranking Republican officials who told Mr. Trump over and over that he was wrong, that the election was fairly held, that he had lost, that there was no basis to challenge it once all of his appeals and lawsuits had been denied. There's a really interesting issue here, Willie. If I wanted to prove what you know, I could either do it based on what you say or on what you're told. And this indictment is replete with what Mr. Trump was told over and over again, that he had lost the election. So I think Ken is exactly right to point out that there's not a First Amendment concern in bringing these charges. It's not what he believed. It's not even what he said. It's what he did. The crime is what he did. He acted on falsely held beliefs. Now, again, the Department of Justice doesn't put things in an indictment that it can't prove. So I imagine that all of these witnesses, overwhelmingly high-ranking Republican officials in the Trump administration, have gone before the grand jury, have testified under oath, and that testimony will be the same testimony adduced at Mr. Trump's criminal trial. It's a damning indictment. It's a compelling case. It was and remains a threat to our democracy.
Coming up next, the Washington Post's Jackie Alemany joins us with the latest from Capitol Hill, how Republicans are responding now that their party's leader could be facing serious time in federal prison. Morning Joe's coming right back.
You've heard the old cliche, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
unprecedented events out of Washington. The second federal indictment of former President Donald Trump, third overall indictment.
You've heard the old cliche that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Whenever our original ancestors created our Constitution and sat down in the right frame of mind in doing what they done in establishing this great nation, it was not done under the pretense of a deranged, wicked, evil, demonic God. It was under the pretense of a holy, righteous, eternal God. And whenever you have a country that has been turned so far upside down to the point of all this sorcery, all this witchcraft, all this paranormal behavior, all this blood, all these guts, all these nudity films, porn, all the above, whenever you have a country that has been inundated spiritually by these demonic spirits that has basically caused society to become blinded or deceived, then you have a society that looks at our Constitution in the wrong frame of mind, in the wrong frame of reality, and compared to how it used to be looked upon. Before Donald Trump became president, it was basically okay for football players to cause a scene in kneeling at the football fields, in which I understand the reason why that they was doing this, and I support the reason why that they was doing that, pertaining to prejudicism and also the things that was being done in the country that was wrong. But whenever you have people that was burning flags right in front of courthouses, or you have things going on to the point that our corrupt government officials was more in support of corruption than they was non-corruption, then you have a nation that has been intimidated by these evil demonic spirits. And proof is in the pudding. I mean, before Donald Trump became president, it had almost reached a point in America that you couldn't even put out a nativity scene of Jesus Christ, Virgin Mary, Joseph, and the virgin birth without somebody thinking that they had the right of pulling up in your yard and tearing up your nativity scene at Christmas or in a church. It had gotten to the point that it had almost become antichrist. Okay? So Donald Trump did do some good, but by him doing some good, he has created a great deal of enemies. Now, if he was sharing information with the Saudis pertaining to secret documents, if he was doing stuff underhandedly, either for money or for prestige, then you know what? He should be thrown under the jail. I don't know that that be the case, because you're always supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But the fact of the matter is that there's so much guiltiness going on in the country pertaining to the corruption that even to this day, even though people can see what has went on in his life, they're still in favor of him. Less than an eighth of a mile from my house, I still have people around here flying big banners of Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. And it's pretty obvious that whenever the blind lead the blind shall leadeth off into the ditch. We have needed a revival for years and years and years, for quite some time here in America. And until we get that, we're going to continue to stagger, just as a drunken person, as the Bible talks about in Daniel, basically weaving to and fro and from towards not knowing in what direction that we're supposed to go in. And as far as I'm concerned, all of this is a big distraction right now, because we've got like 5 or 6 major fronts going on all over the planet that just within a matter of hours could break into a third world war, regardless whether it was China and Japan, regardless whether it was North Korea, regardless whether it was Iran or Jerusalem, regardless whether it was Russia, and Ukrainians, regardless whether it was Africa or some of these other third world countries right now that are having uprisings. This is a big, big distraction towards taking the American people's eyes off of the things that they should be focused upon. because we have been intimidated by Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. In other words, while you're fixing to rob the bank on one end of the town, you create a diversion on the opposite end of town, like catching something on fire. That way everybody is focused on the opposite side of town, while in the meantime, the people that really wanted to rob the bank are in there robbing the bank. It's a diversion. We have been purposely sabotaged. There's a difference in people being misunderstood because of ignorance or whatever, and it's another thing because people deliberately wanted to go down this path. And I tend to wonder that there's just as many people that's guilty that has purposely set us down this path of confusion, this dark path, that has been done intentionally so that it would create all this chaos in putting us where we are today. That's the reason why I blame Congress, because Congress was the ones that supported this. They knew that Donald Trump was not a professional politician. They knew that they was going to put the circus clown in the circus that was going to cause a diversion to the extent that maybe these other politicians that is guilty of all this could wiggle and worm their way out of accountability issues that's ever caused us to get in this kind of condition to begin with. Well, now even that's blowed up in their faces. Everything that the wicked, demonic world has done has blowed up in their faces. That's the reason why I continue to say what I say, that it couldn't have happened to a better group of people in regards towards showing their true colors. And it began right here in Northwest Tennessee. That's the sad thing about it. I've always been a supporter of Tennessee pertaining to the things that they've stood for, going all the way back to the Revolutionary War and even beyond. I've always stood for a great deal of the things that the Tennesseans have stood for. But you know, whenever the Tennesseans get to the point that they're blinded, even so much as global warming, it's not the fact that they was ignorant. They wanted to become ignorant. They wanted to become blinded. They wanted to stand under the pretense of pleading the fifth or pleading the insanity plea by saying, oh, we didn't know. And that's the very exact same thing at Lucifer, the main perpetrator that started all this corruption to begin with. He's going to stand and he's going to try to defend himself under the pretense of ignorance. Well, God, I didn't know. Thing about it is, in the spiritual world, they're going to be held more accountable for their actions than what the Homo sapien world's going to be. And if people cannot understand that we have been led down a road of doom and gloom beginning at the White House in 1988 in Ronald Reagan's administration, if people cannot acknowledge that and admit to that, then they don't want. They're purposely doing it to the degree that they don't want to admit to the truth. You know, whenever it talks about the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, a lot of people talk about the truth, but they don't want the truth. Deep down inside, they don't want that truth to come out pertaining to what their true motives actually was. You know why? Because they've been working under the shadows of phony, baloney, fake people. Just like Donald Trump that brought up phony media, fake news. He nailed it on the head in so many areas. Just so happens Donald Trump become too forceful in his actions, and now he don't have no more wiggle room. I personally believe that the man would be better off if he was to plead guilty. Maybe he does need to plead insanity or something under the 27th Amendment or something like that. Maybe he does need to throw the towel in and walk away elegantly towards being able to save his reputation and save his company, because as of right now, him himself is doomed. And the reason why is because they have got the goods on him. All his people has rolled on him. Those that he thought that they was in-house with him, he thought that they was loyal to him, and I guarantee you he's going to find out that the very people, including his vice president, will be the people that will throw him under the bus. So if he's got any sense at all, he will try to work out a plea bargain with the prosecutors that are involved in all this and come back later for a different battle. In other words, he's no longer choosing his battles. Now his battle is consuming him. The very thing that he thought that he was going to be able to use against the system for the American people have now backfired to the degree that now the system is going to prove that it was Donald J. Trump that was against the people, that was hurting the people against the will of the people. That's what they're going to do. And whenever they do this, Donald Trump and his business and anything associated with his business will be dumped. In other words, they've finally come up with the silver bullet or the dagger that's going to finish him off. Metaphorically, politically, psychologically, emotionally, financially, and all the above. If you got any sense, he'll throw the towel in. That's what Nixon done. Nixon throwed the towel in. Nixon knew that they was fixing to come down on him like a, you know what, on a what.
The 45-page document lays out 4 felony charges against the former president: conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. All for his alleged efforts to stay in power after losing the 2020 election. Trump is scheduled to make his first court appearance in the new case tomorrow at 4 p.m. in Washington, D.C.
You know, Willie, what's so interesting is we've been talking over the past several hours about how this testimony all came from people who supported Donald Trump through and through. What's so interesting is if for our friends on the West Coast, we'll get to some of that. But for those across the rest of the country that have been watching this morning, they're hearing us say, they go, okay, well, we get that. They were all Trumpers, they were all Republicans. It's just so important to remember these people who testified against Donald Trump, that stood up to lie after lie after lie about him winning the election, supposedly, they testified against their own interest. Mike Pence stood to gain power by being vice president for 8 years and then being next in line to be the successor of Donald Trump. All of those White House employees, they didn't want to leave on January 20th, 2021. You talk to people that work in the White House, they tell you that's one of the most depressing moments when you're in there and then suddenly, whoosh. I mean, Mika always told me the story of her father being national security advisor. He had the red phone, like world leaders calling him around the clock. Ronald Reagan raises his hand, secret.
It shows you how out of touch of reality that these people are by wanting to turn their positions into a lifelong career. Whenever you get involved with politics, it's not supposed to be a lifelong career. Whenever you have a football team, NFL Super Bowl, there's only going to be one winner and the rest of them is going to be losers. It shows you how far out of context that these people have become in the realization of reality.
Rip out the red line. They say bye. They drive away after being there for 4 years, and everything changes.
That's the reason why it should be open term limits. It don't matter if it's local government, state government, or federal government, because it becomes so stagnated, we wind up going through what we're going through right now, which is a actual defeat to the original desire or dream in regards towards our open, fair democracy. That's what they've done. They have stained the republic. And the reason why is out of greed, selfishness, wanting to showboat.
Thing changes. That's why it's so important. These people that have all testified.
So if the truth be known, probably wasn't but maybe a very, very small percentage of them that got involved in politics for the betterment of the will of the people rather than the betterment of the will of themselves. That's how far-fetched and corrupt that the system has become. Broken.
Against Donald Trump, these people that stood up to his lies, to his attempt to overturn democracy, they were doing it not just against his interest, they were doing it against their own best interest, which makes Jack Smith's indictment, the read, all the more compelling.
It is, and that is the power of this document, just as it was the power of the case made by the January 6th committee, which is they took great pains to make sure it was the people in the room, it was the advisors, it was the cabinet members who had been supportive of Donald Trump up to that point and finally said, sir, you lost the election. And he would propose a lie as it's documented here. Well, I heard about this thing in Michigan. Nope, that didn't happen. What about this in Arizona? Nope, didn't happen. And calling not just on the people in the room in Washington, but on local officials, you know, the attorneys general in those states and people who run the county elections in those states who would say, sir, respectfully, there's nothing wrong with our election here. We've looked and we've looked and we've looked. And that is why this is such a powerful document, because it doesn't come from partisans or people who have an axe to grind with Donald Trump. It comes from people who in real time, as it documented in these 45 pages, were saying, sir, you lost. You lost. And that takes away his argument that's being made already this morning by his defenders and his attorneys, which is that he was acting in good faith, that he was saying, yes, I actually believed I lost the election. So you can't, that's not a crime. I thought I lost and I wanted to right that wrong. Nope. Chapter and verse, 45 pages, advisor after advisor, cabinet member after cabinet member. There is no basis for your claims that this election was stolen, it was secure, and you, sir, lost. And Donald Trump knew it.
Just like a Super Bowl, just like a World Series, there's only going to be one winner, and everybody else that played that year will be losers. That's the way, that's the law of the dynamics of playing the game. And whenever you start trying to change the dynamics of the law, then you're going beyond the perimeters of where you should be, and now you're dealing with a phony reality in trying to create your own narrative. I think the lesson that's going to be learned from all of this, that God's people will prevail, that justice will prevail, and that democracy will prevail. I don't know how many close scrapes that we're going to have to go through in getting to that point, but I truly believe that ultimately the meek shall inherit the earth, just like the Bible talks about, and that the good people will rise up that will exceed and excel above and beyond the bad people. I truly believe that. But now you're going to have to be willing to stick your neck out, kind of like myself, that was willing to stick my neck out towards telling my story and telling how it happened, when it happened, how it, who was in behind it, and etc. And I realize in lots of different cases, towards me being on this quest that I've been on now since I've come back to Tennessee, basically exposing these people, regardless whether it was the people in Tennessee, regardless whether it was people up in Kentucky, regardless whether it's what went on in my life in Atlanta, Georgia, Kennesaw, Georgia, or Duluth, Georgia, or downtown Georgia, or what went on in my life in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. It takes a great deal of courage to step out and do this. To say, you know what? This is who I am. This is what happened, and I've got verification, authentic facts to prove it. In the meantime, I got to work around these hurdles that Satan tries to deliberately place in front of me, regardless whether it was like the ordeal that happened personally in my brother and my life for 3 consecutive years whenever I moved back here from 2014 to 2017, that basically costed him his own personal life, or it was an incident that I recently just got through going through less than 48 hours ago, being in a laundromat in Union City, Tennessee, where a bunch of people come at me towards trying to provoke or create a rise to the point that that one thing led to another, and the next thing you know, it turned into an all-out and out knockdown and drag out. That's what they was hoping before they ever come into that laundromat, that we're going to get this old boy. We're going to get him some way or another. Let's do it in a very, very demonic, manipulative way, and maybe he'll fall for the bait. See, that's exactly what they was hoping that my brother and I would do out here for 3 consecutive years while we was being attacked, victimized, hunted, basically tormented, while the courts in Weakley County sat back and watched it. They was hoping that eventually, if we'll put enough pressure on him, he'll do one or two things. He'll either buckle and give in and cross the line, and then we can go ahead and finish him off, or maybe we can put enough pressure on the old boy that he'll take his tail and poke it between his legs, and he'll run out of the community like a scalded dog. Like a scalded dog is what they was hoping for. Or they was hoping for blood to be on the floor. And it didn't matter if it was their blood, my blood. The fact of the matter is, Satan and Satan's people, including the courts in Weakley County, have failed. The people in this country have failed pertaining to their attempts in what they was trying to do towards overpowering our system in the wrong way. There's no doubt that the system is corrupt. There's no doubt that the system needs to be reformed. There's no doubt that the swamp needs to be drained. But there's a right way in draining the swamp, and there's a wrong way, and Donald Trump has chosen the wrong path in trying to reform the American broken system. That's the bottom line. Now, whether or not you want to accept that or not, that'll be up to you. But that is the bottom line, my friends. In other words, Donald Trump didn't play it out smart enough to figure out that this whole thing was going to wind up backfiring on him. And that's exactly what's going to happen to Lucifer and all the other wicked demonic spirits that created the mutiny up in heaven to begin with. It's all going to backfire on them eventually. That's the reason why if you read Revelations, it goes through different stages, and ultimately the final stage in the end will be whenever Lucifer is loosed from the spiritual prison. Everything will be in the spiritual world at that point in time. Whenever Lucifer is loosed and goes and deceives the nations once more again, the second time, in the Gog and Magog, and that's whenever God will put an end to all of it. It says that fire come down from New Jerusalem that consumed those that fell for the bait the last time, and that Satan himself, Lucifer, the Antichrist, will be thrown into a bottomless pit where basically it will be the end of his existences. And he will never get out of that prison, indicating that he will never be able to influence humanity again in the wrong way. That's whenever God will recreate a new heaven and a new earth, and that's when all things will become new again. And don't you think for a second that those that manage to go through this without destruction of their own selves, don't you think for a second that we're not going to be able to remember what went on with the idiot that decided to challenge the kingdom of God to begin with, towards him being right now, I'm futuristically, metaphorically speaking here, that he'll be burning in a pit of hell, and that will basically be the ultimate test or lesson for all of us to learn, including the spirit world, that whatever you do not challenge the Almighty. Now, the Almighty loves us, and the Almighty gives us certain dominion to what we can do and what we can't do. Even Lucifer, before he done what he done, stood beside Michael, and according to the Bible, was considered one of the most grandest, prettiest angels in heaven, that played a harp that was absolutely memorizing to most other angels in there because of his glory. But he become pig-headed. He become greedy. He becomes selfish in thinking that he deserved more glory and honor than the Almighty himself. That's whenever he created a mutiny. And that's whenever there was war in heaven, And that's whenever he come down here to earth to want to contaminate all of us, deceive us, blind us, that has put us where we are today. Now, just because we're here where we are today does not mean that we have to be here tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. We can conform and we can come together and we can work out these wrinkles and we can become not only that in which what our ancestors desired for us to be, but what God intended for all of us to be on a global stage and not just a national stage. But it's going to take the fortitude of people wanting to do that. And if you don't want to do that, if you want to continue to act like you're stupid, if you want to continue to plead the fifth or plead the insanity plea, well then basically you're already doomed. And your doom is causing the doom of others. And until others is willing to wake up and see this and understand this, then basically we probably are doomed. We probably are doomed as far as on a physical supernatural form. But I don't believe that we're going to stay doomed. I believe that we're going to have an enlightenment awakening, and the people are going to wake up to this, and we are going to put an end to the works of this demonic figure, even if we ourselves as Christians have to run this demonic figure all the way to the very pits of hell ourselves in making sure that the axis of evil is destroyed. According to the Bible, according to God's word, not some far-fetched ideal, not some sorceress, not some occultist, not some barbaric heathenistic ideal that's developed into a religion, but God's word, his holy, righteous, divine word. For the Bible says that the meek shall inherit the earth. And I still stand behind that. And I'll always stand behind that. And I will honor God just as Job did, that even though the worms may devour my flesh, I will not curse my God and die. And that's what Satan wants us to do. He wants us to curse God and die, because he's already cursed God to the point that he knows death is right around the corner. And that's the reason why that he's coming out in great wrath, just as the Bible teaches that he will come down in great wrath in the last days, because he knows his time is ticking. It is short. And that, my friends, didn't cost you a dime. We're going to do this. We're going to click this over and we're going to start fresh right here. Because I'm pretty sure whatever's going on
for those 60 and older
has probably
has
already done compassed the Good Morning Show to the point that now
blockbuster game to get to the
news entities are actually coming on that will be fresh. That way we'll be able to stay on target towards what's actually occurring all over the world. Just like the soccer game right there. I probably should have stayed on that.
Total silence, no communication at all. It was the best thing that I could have done. And even now, when they're so connected to these, send them to a camp where they cannot use their phones. I promise they will thank you for it. Part 2, though, I was one of those parents. They used to post once a week. They used to post the pictures of the kids, and they weren't great pictures. They're probably better now. They were like big group pictures. I was scanning, looking for my daughter because I hadn't talked to her in so long. She was 12 years old, and trying to see if she was a smile on her face.
Let's go here. Let's look at this for a second.
Yeah, we'll see you again later. Molly Hemingway with us this morning. Molly, I want to break down the timing of all of this. Monday, Devon Archer implicates Biden in a financial scandal. Tuesday, Trump's indicted. Any coincidence in the timing?
Well, it's not just that happened this week, but you had 2 other instances where you had devastating news for the Biden family, whether it was the release of that FD 1023 document that alleges a bribery scheme with Burisma, or when Hunter Biden, that his plea agreement blew up in court. Each time those things happened, the next day Jack Smith either charged or added charges to Trump. So the timing is extremely suspicious. But regardless of the timing, the actual indictment needs to be dealt with and needs to be analyzed. And people are very surprised at just how weak this latest indictment is, even in a sea of fairly weak indictments.
It has been seen as weak by many, many people. Does that mean that Trump gains ground on this indictment?
Well, anytime they add charges to him, that definitely makes sort of the case for him in the view of a lot of his supporters. No one is as much a victim of the weaponization of our Department of Justice and our, the attacks on the rule of law as President Trump is, and a lot of Republican voters care about it. That's why you see the many other candidates, even if they're competing against Trump, they recognize that the Department of Justice
I've run into the same exact thing in the Christian world, to the point that brothers and sisters in the Lord knows what I'm teaching and preaching is authentic, coming from the Bible. But because they are mandated in their group that they belong to, regardless whether it's the Baptist, the Southern Baptist, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Church of Christ, or the Pentecostal people, or whatever, they will refuse to go with what's right rather than jeopardize the group that they've already made a commitment to. And it goes back to what I was saying a while ago, that whenever you're dealing with this type of blindness, whenever you're dealing with this type of idioticness, these people that are doing this are going to cause the destruction to all of us, and not just part of us. We can see where the FBI has failed us. We can see where basically the CIA failed us pertaining to 9/11. We can see where the U.S. Marshals and the ATF has failed us pertaining to some of the events that's gone on here in America, pertaining to them supposed to be protecting us and taking care of us, in which they almost fail routinely almost every day in regards towards us being hacked or other things that's going on pertaining to all the violence, all the fentanyl, all the illegal immigrants coming over here. We can see again and again and again where various policymaker people have failed us, but yet no, the system is still trying to lag on. The system is still trying to hold on, because you got all these bankers and all these politicians and all these, even the preachers, that have made all these commitments, regardless whether it's a commitment with their party or it's a commitment towards paying for their yacht or a vacation home or keeping their nephews or their nieces in college. They've made all these commitments and they hate to give those commitments up. And because of it, it's turned into stagnation. It's just like a pond where you don't no longer have running water. And it becomes stagnated. And usually a green film will come over that body of water to the point that it'll cut off the oxygen supply. And the next thing you know, if you don't watch, the pond will actually roll. And once it does that, everything in that pond will die. And that's basically where we're at right now, towards rolling. And once it rolls, once we cross that Rubicon, there'll be no returning back. And this is the material that I have steadily put out now for the past 4 years, ever since my brother died in 2017. Basically in 2018, I started putting out material. So for the past 4 years, I have steadily been putting out on social media platform, either on YouTube or Facebook. I started out originally on YouTube because I was shy on going over to Facebook because I'd heard so many bad things about Facebook. And come to find out that YouTube was just as bad, if not worse, than Facebook towards not regulating anything that they was allowing for children to get a hold of. So the whole thing has turned into a free-for-all. Whenever I first come back here in 2014, I was going to use old method ways towards passing out CDs and DVDs. Oh man, was they ever on to that. It didn't matter if I was dropping off material in Kenton City Hall or Mason Hall City Hall or Union City Police District or Martin Police District or the courthouse in Union City, the courthouse in Dresden, or if I was down in Duisburg somewhere. Oh man, was they ever watching me. They was wanting to analyze and scrutinize every little piece of material that I put out there to the public because I was using old methods that I'd used before. Well, after I got my smartphone telephone and I started figuring out how to use this thing, and I realized, well, this was the very thing that you prayed for all along, DJ, that if God didn't bring in some sort of intercession for you to be able to use, you know, originally they come out with the Dragon. I think it was called the Dragon, where you could, if you had problems in spelling, you could speak to your computer at home and it would basically lay out things just as a typist would, and everything basically be spelt correctly. Well, I didn't have time to keep nothing like that around me. Besides that, I knew how corrupted that the internet and the computer system had become. So I basically stonewalled it out of my life that I did have in my life temporarily along in 97, but I took it out of my life because I knew that that could very well affect. In other words, I seen too many, it exceeded more bad qualities than it did good qualities, and because of that, I took it out of my life. Well, whenever I come back here in 2014, after I went through what I went through in 2005, after I got attacked again right here in Weakley County and lost my mini farm, got attacked by the Martin police, had to move from this area, had to declare bankruptcy, lost my job, had to go to Nashville, Tennessee and move. In 2014, whenever I come back here, and my brother died after 2017, I knew then, hey, if you're going to make it work by using God and the tools that God has given you to put out there to the people, you're going to have to think, and continue to think, study, and continue to study towards trying to figure out how you're going to be able to make another move towards getting your message out to the people. And that's exactly what I've been doing now for the past 3.5, 4 years on social media platform. And I personally believe that my message is getting out there to the point that now it's not just within a local level, but now it's within a global level, especially those that done what they done to me, not only here in Martin, Tennessee in 2005, but what they done to me up around Grand Rivers, Kentucky, and the Kentucky Dam in 2007. Leading to the ice storm in 2009, and then that led into what went on in my life out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma in 2009, that all these moves that they have done are now backfiring on them. And now the people are seeing just exactly, since the dust is settled and the smoke is cleared, now the people all over the world are beginning to use their own judgment in understanding, my God, this man the whole time has either been set up or they have manipulated his intentions towards what his will was all along, towards love, grace, peace, mercy, and etc., the things out of the Bible. And maybe there is a chance that there will be an awakening, a planetary awakening pertaining to a revival that will lead into a revolution. If not, we are doomed. But I don't want to believe that we're doomed. I want to believe that we're at the brink of seeing something big, major, and it's going to be performed through and by God, working through God's people, that will turn this around. That will see the meek inherit the earth. That these people that knows that I've been right will eventually leave their pedestal in the people or the group that they've made these commitments to, even at their own personal cost, kind of like the Cheney woman did, Senator Cheney. She made that move, she made that commitment, and eventually the people that has made these moves, these commitments, they'll be rewarded for. And if they're not rewarded in this lifetime, I promise you they will be rewarded in the lifetime to come. Because Satan and Satan's people are not going to win this war. They're not going to win the battle. That's the reason why I put up out here that the war is over, but the battle's just begun. The war is over, according to the spiritual war, because Satan has already lost the war. Satan and Satan's people have lost the war. It's just a matter of people like us now committing to God and being faithful to the prophecies of seeing the prophecies fulfill themselves the way that the prophecies was originally supposed to have fulfilled themselves going back 30 plus years ago, whenever this all first originated, pertaining to the opening of the seals, the two witnesses, the inhabitants here upon to the planet, etc., 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 seeing all the pressures being developed because of all the climate deniers and all the greed and stuff that the petroleum crude oil has developed to the world, that eventually there will be an awakening. There will be a risation out of the ashes, that God's people will progress. God's real people. God's sincere people.
Department of Justice being completely out of control is a threat to the Republic and is a #1 issue among all Republican voters. And it's definitely going to continue to be that. It's almost surreal and shocking that this continues to happen and that more people aren't stepping up against it.
Let me talk to you about the downgrade that America experienced today. America's credit rating downgraded. It was AAA, gold-plated, now it's AA+, less than stellar. I think this is a blow to Biden, because he and the Democrats just can't stop spending. And it's that non-stop spending and debt accumulation.
Stop. It's not just a blow to one particular man. They can use the scapegoat all they want to by saying, oh, it's a blow to Biden. It's a blow to Biden's administration. It's a blow to all of us whenever something like that occurs. Republican, Democrat, Independent, don't matter. It's a blow to all of us. This thing has turned into a free-for-all.
That has given rise to this downgrade. How do you see it?
Well, it's somewhat surprising that it took this long for that downgrade, but definitely this is a blow to the Bidenomics agenda that the Biden campaign seems to...
See what I'm saying? It's just the blind leading the blind. They can't see the trees for the forest. And you know, empathy and sympathy only goes so far.
Jeff Swan, politics.
It only goes so far, but eventually you have to start smelling the stuff that you're walking through, because you know deep down in your heart that it's not just going to affect you directly, but it's going to affect your loved ones, your friends, your children, your children's children, and etc. indirectly, because of this hypocrisy that has been laid out for the people to follow after. And until we make a stand, just like my brother and I made this stand whenever we moved out here in 2014, and we put this cross up, turning it sideways, indicating the broken system, because the cross originally was working in favor towards the government system and punishing people, because that's the way that they punished people back in the Roman days, is that they hung them on a cross until their death. That the system itself is broken. Until we figure out that the system is broken, and until we figure out that we're going to fix the system, we're only going to waller in our own disparities, just as a hog or a pig would waller in its own manure. That's where we're at, friends. We are in a stagnated position right now, to the point that people cannot see the trees for the forest. And I don't know if they're doing that out of ignorance, because they're not qualified to see what they ought to be seeing, or if they're doing it intentionally, knowing that if the chaos goes on for a certain length of time, eventually the whole thing will collapse. I tend to wonder if that's where a great deal of the people out there that are doing this intentionally, is that they're hoping for the inedible, even at the expense of seeing their own children and their own grandchildren, their lives being destroyed. And you talk about a wicked society that is willing to do that to their own, towards eating its own. You don't get much any worse than that. And whenever it reaches that level, then, just as the Bible teaches that it would have been better for Sodom and Gomorrah than for that group of people that wouldn't render or wouldn't surrender to the truth. You know, whenever God went in and destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, within a flash second, it was over with. Boom, bam, all them people's lives was over with. No more suffering, no more manipulation, no more games, no more hurting, no more agony, no more pain. It was over with. But God said it was going to be worser for those, ultimately in the end, than it was for Sodom and Gomorrah. You know why? Because God hadn't yet come back and destroyed us. If he wanted to, just one flash and this could all be over with for all of us. But he don't want it to end that way. You know why? Because we don't deserve for our lives to end the same way that the people's lives ended in Sodom and Gomorrah, which was just a flash. No, we're going to waller around in our own inadequacies. We're going to waller around in our own hypocrisies. We're going to waller around, and in the meantime, you got all these people that are going to be suffering that didn't have nothing to do with all this. And it really puts a brand new perspective upon to the innocent lives, because I personally had an innocent life come into my life of my own bloodline through my son about 2 months ago, pertaining to a granddaughter that I just feel absolutely so nullified by the fact that all those little girls, all them little boys that didn't have nothing to do with this are going to have to suffer on account of this. And whenever it reaches the point that people are no longer concerned about their own wrongdoings to the point of their own sufferings, but they're actually turning their heads on the sufferings of others, then, my friends, you are dealing with a very, very wicked society. And whenever that happens, then you open up yourselves for doom and gloom, coming in the form of disease, coming in the form of $33 trillion in debt, coming in the form of all the illegal immigrants coming over here, bringing all the fentanyl, all the drugs, bringing all the other types of diseases, and our labor force being taken advantage of, all these factories being empty. I could go on and on and on. In where right now, presently in the year 2023, we are wallowing around in our own self-pity. In the meantime, the wealthy, the rich, and those that thinks that we're not onto them, they're going to play this thing out as long as they can, because they don't want to miss that payment on that yacht. They don't want to miss that payment on that vacation home. They don't want to miss that payment going to that college, putting their niece or their nephew in college, hoping that they'll be just as manipulative as they are. You see, whenever you get to looking at the works of mankind in comparison to the works of God, there is no comparison. And mankind will be discovered every time. It's always backfired on societies. It didn't matter if it was the society back during the kings and the back in the old Bible. It didn't matter if it happened during the time of the Egyptians with Moses. It didn't happen if it happened during the time of Noah. It didn't matter if it happened during the time of Jesus. Every time that society has turned its back on the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, that society has suffered immensely. And if they didn't suffer in one form, they suffered in 1,000 times 1,000 other forms that brought misery into their lives. Misery that they are accountable and responsible for. Not God, but themselves and the demonic forces working with them. So whenever these insurance companies go out and write up a policy on somebody because a tree fell on their house or fell on their car, please do not put every time that it was an act of God. Because God may not have had absolutely nothing to do with it. Satan's got powers too. That's the reason why the Bible says that in the last days he will come down in great wrath, displaying his anger, because he knows certain people such as myself are onto him, and now we are going to enlighten the world pertaining to the damages that have been done. People that listen to messages such as myself, they got one or two choices. For the past 3 years, 4 years, I've seen the choices that they've made. They've been kicking me out. They've been ignoring me. They've been steadily compartmentalizing me. They've been steadily stereotyping me, putting me in different categories. Always this, always that, always this way, always that way. And if they hadn't been doing that, then I've been dealing with other demons that's coming through other sources, like I dealt with less than 48 hours ago, towards going into a laundromat, trying to provoke me into anger to the point that the situation boils into an actual physical, violent confrontation. That's what the courts in Weakley County was hoping that was going to occur for 3 years of constantly being mauled, 3 years of being hunted, 3 years of being tormented, 3 years of being executed, spiritually executed out here, to the point that David, the only thing that my brother could do is shake his head and say, my God, Dennis, we're doomed. We're doomed. And I kept telling David, we're just going to have to hang on a little longer, man. And instead of David hanging on, he gave up. He gave up because he couldn't take it. All his peers had turned against him because his brother come back to live on the property, and David didn't run his brother off. And now David was caught in between a hard place and a rock, to the point that he knew what he was dealing with, but there wasn't nothing that he could do about it at the time. And nor neither could I. And as long as people are stiff-necked and they continue to keep plugging up their ears, things is not gradually, but fastly getting worse and worse and worse. And until the people get enough of this, they're not going to listen to somebody such as myself. But my point is this: is society so doomed to the point that even though they get enough of it, that they still don't turn from their sinful and wicked ways? They still don't listen to people such as myself. And if that be the case, then not only are they dooming themselves, but they're dooming their children and their children's children. And you don't think that those people are going to be held accountable for that one day? You're daggum right, they will be. In other words, the guilty, the elders, the ones that knew better, will stand in front of the Almighty during the floods or during some of the other major events that went on worldwide. And instead of them standing there pointing their finger at God and saying, well, God, it's your fault, it's your fault, God's going to turn that finger around and say, no, no, no. You was the adult. You was the mature one. And because what you done or what you didn't do that you should have done, you brought misery into not only your lives, but to your children and your children's lives. And now the innocent are going to be pointing that same finger at them same adults by saying, you see there, you didn't care enough about your own flesh and blood to help us out. And you led us down a road of misery, doom, and gloom. And they can sit and deny it all they want. Oh, no, that's not so. That's not so. Oh, no, it is so. And everybody and their brother knows that it's so. That's the reason why I said a while ago that whenever the manifestations of the judgment of God starts falling upon humanity, in which it already is, if you look at Revelations very, very carefully, it comes in sequences. It comes in variations. And each variation after the other variation gets a little more serious, gets a little more abrupt. Because the Bible is very clear by saying, woe be unto the inhabitants hereupon to the earth, whenever you shall start to see these things start to materialize. Well, as the things are materializing, if you got any sense about yourself, if you got any compassion and love about yourself or about the ones that you care about, especially your loved ones, you'll turn from your wickedness and sinful ways and you'll start doing the right and proper thing. But if your love is not a true love, as an agape love, and you're more in love with yourself than you are with God, then it's pretty obvious the road that you have set sail for yourself and for those around you to go in. What's going on right now with Donald Trump, what's going on right now with the Bidens, what's going on right now in the White House in general is one of the saddest moments of time, of history, that the American people could have ever dreamed about or thought about, that right now we are in the thick of the storm. The political storm that we're in right now. That if we don't watch this political storm, it's already turning into a physical storm in a lot of people's lives, but if we don't watch, it's going to turn into a physical storm in all of our lives. Because once enough pillars start falling up underneath the foundation to the point that the whole thing gives way, as I have said before, whenever the money goes bad, it just don't go bad on the East Coast, and the West Coast money still be good. It'll be just like a gallon of milk. Whenever a gallon of milk spoils, it spoils on the top just like it does on the bottom. Whenever it spoils all at once. So it won't matter at that point in time whenever the money spoils, whenever the system crumbles. It'll crumble just as much for the poor man as it will be the working man, as it will be the rich man. The money will be bad on the top just as it will be bad on the bottom. And if that's the direction, my friends, that you're wanting to go, then continue to keep doing what you're doing by putting your fingers in your ears, being stiff-necked towards ignoring people such as myself. Continue to keep doing what you're doing, because I promise you it's just a matter of time before the worst of the worst is going to happen to us. In the meantime, all I can do is what I'm doing now, which is basically producing these videos, putting out this material, trying to make my story known, not just to the Tennesseans, not just to the Americans, but to the world in general, making my story known and telling my story again and again and again, and hopefully somebody will awaken out of the stupor that they're in, and hopefully our ship that is no longer heading towards the storm, but is in the storm, hopefully we will have enough people out there that will awaken, that will begin to start making the right moves for all of us, and not just for their selfish selves. I have pretty much so finished off on the coats of red that I've been displaying here for the past, I guess, month now. With the temperatures being so hot, I've been having to pick and choose in when and how that I got out here to work on this stuff. And hopefully with this rain now will help our farming community that much more. Once more, if a major drought would have hit in America this year, I would have had people trying to drag me out of that trailer right there, blaming me for the drought. And the whole time, the drought would have been their own faults, because they didn't listen and they didn't do the godly, moral, right thing. But just because God blessed us this year with multiple rains, even though the Mississippi River has gotten so low, at times they had to stop the ferries. Just because my prophecies that I have given for this year has already coming into play, does not mean that next year, that whenever you look across that field right there, that you're going to see greenery the way that you see in it right now. Because I guarantee you, God can bring whatever type of environment, regardless whether it be a green environment or a war environment or a loving environment or a misery environment, into our environment based upon our actions towards what we're either doing or what we're not doing that we should be doing. To be quite honest with you, I get tired of making these videos. Because right now, I should be engulfed in the wordings and the teachings of the Bible, more so than what is being displayed on our news almost every day towards the chaoticness that we're having to deal with, regardless whether it's coming from the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. I should be totally submerged right now into nothing but prayer and scripture and the teachings of the Bible. 100%. But because of the surrounding circumstances that I've been having to deal with, I've been having to basically compromise my own personal obligations for myself and for others in doing stuff like I'm doing out here, which I don't mind doing this for our military, towards being an advocate for our military. But I can already perceive, looking at the Bible, whenever all the rivers dries up and all the chaos turns into nothing but madness on the planet, that then it will be left to the fittest of the fit to be able to survive. And to be quite honest with you, the generations that's growing up right now in America that's been so spoilt because of the baby boomers and the Woodstock hippie era, I really don't know if the younger generation has the ability, and I know they don't have the ability within their own selves to be able to survive and come out on top the way that our ancestors did 75 plus years ago, whenever Satan stuck out his ugly head in and caused so much havoc in the people's lives that it almost brought the destruction to humanity. Not just the destruction to America, but the destruction to humanity. And my friends, I hate to say this, but if we don't watch, we're fixing to go down the same walk of life that they went down 75 plus years ago. And that's what I'm saying. If our government right now was to declare a draft, an open draft, that all teenagers from the age of 18 to 22, like they're doing over in Russia right now, how chaotic that it would be towards our young life, our young kids right now, the youth, of how many of them would be running to the border, regardless whether it was Mexico or Canada, towards wanting to run from their obligations of their patriotic duties to perform here in America. We have been stonewalled. We have been sabotaged. We have been set up. And until people are willing to see that and understand that and accept that and then do something about that, we're only going to waller in our own inadequacies, in our own waller. Just like a dog going back to its vomit. Just like the Bible teaches, we're only going to go back to the same old that will be destruction to all of us. Thanks for listening. Good luck to all of us. And as we end our program by saying shalom, God bless America, and God bless our endeavors and where we go from here, from this moment on. Thank you for listening. Good luck to each and every one of us. And heaven help us all. And heaven help us all. And where we go from this moment on. It's like the DOT coming down here, inspecting the roads. They've been doing an excellent job down here on 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, towards maintaining this road and trying to restructuralize it in the way towards it being more decent than just stuck out here in the middle of Timbuktu and nowhere. Thanks again. God bless and shalom.